welcome to Sinister Studies. Join me each episode as I delve into some truly sinister topics and traumatize my family. I'll be joined by one or more teenager, and from time to time, we'll have special guests. Be forewarned, our stories are seriously sinister, so listener discretion is always advised. All right.
Are we chill? Are we good?
We're good. Piper's good too. Welcome back.
Hello.
This is part 2 of the Samantha Koenig murder.
Unfortunately. I hate this guy.
At the end of our last episode, we were talking about how Samantha was finally found.
Oh my god.
Now that Samantha has been found, the team is going to focus on Keyes. They were going to find out everything they could on him. When they started doing some initial digging, they found no property records, no school transcripts, no gun permits, no social media. They did set up a tip line, and the tips went one of two ways. First, his construction customers were calling saying he was a great businessman, he was honest and hardworking. And then others were calling in that he seemed to get unnecessarily aggressive with them, he was creepy, so fun stuff. Tips were coming in from across the country. Someone called in a tip that they had found a Facebook account of Keyes that was listed under an alias. Another person saw an ad in Utah of Keyes selling a gun super duper cheap. It was posted the day he claimed he was in Texas. Yet another tip said that Keyes had an Amish sister in Maine and that he is or was part of an extremist Christian group of white supremacists.
Ew. Ew.
And his mom was part of a cult that was described as Koreshian in nature.
Whatever the fuck that means.
We will probably cover that, but if you get to it, which at the rate your history class is going, you're not going to. It is the Waco incident.
Wait, when does that happen? At which point in time?
90s. Early 90s. Oh, wow.
We're, it is still on World War I right now. So, that's never happening.
You'll never get there. So his mom's group had bought a bunch of property in Wells, Texas, and it was to the point with this religious group that the locals were really freaked out by them.
So his mom's in a cult?
They were doing shit like cleaning their guns on the front lawn type of situation.
That's strange.
They were buying blocks of property. And the police were really hesitant to intervene because they didn't want another Waco situation on their hands. When investigators searched the computers in Keyes' home, they found one that was of some interest to them. There were hundreds of pictures and related articles on missing persons.
Because that's normal.
This was the point that their suspicions that Keyes had done this before became a reality, and they were likely looking at a prolific serial killer. Investigators told Keyes that they would not release his name to the press in an effort to keep him talking. He asked for the prosecutor's help in firing his attorney because his attorney was venomously against the death penalty. But the prosecutors can't fire somebody's attorney for them.
Who can?
Keyes. He would have to.
But why didn't he then?
I'm not sure.
Like,
it wasn't
do it
very
yourself.
specific of why he couldn't fire him. But he was able to determine that if he stated that his lawyer was his legal counsel only in the Samantha Koenig case and none other, that he would be able to speak with prosecutors about other cases. He had it on record that for any other case other than Samantha's, he would be representing himself.
Why? Because he didn't want this attorney? Or what?
He's playing games.
Oh yeah, he always is. Fucking hate him. I want it on record that I think this guy sucks and, yeah.
Kevin Feldus, being the delightful man that he is, and being the federal prosecutor, tried to bully Keyes into giving him information.
Wait, wasn't that the guy who was trying to get... You know what I mean.
Yes, he shouldn't be interrogating Keyes, but he was going to do it anyway.
This guy sucks too.
Keyes told them that he was only going to give them information that they would eventually find on the computer. He did have a list of demands. He wanted candy, he wanted smoke breaks, access to the internet, and he wanted them to set an execution date for him to be no more than 1 year away. Feldis told them that they would relay the information to the higher-ups, and Keyes agreed to give them, quotes, 2 bodies and a name.
Wait, an execution date? So he knew the shit he basically inadvertently admitted that the shit he did was worthy of execution.
Yes.
Because, like, how many confirmed people did they have at this point that he killed?
Just the one. Just one? So far. Just the one.
I mean, would you get executed for killing one person? I mean, it probably depends, but...
Yes, you can.
But is it, like, common to get executed for killing one person? Or
you can get the death penalty for doing that. Yeah, absolutely. So one of Keyes' demands is that... One of Keyes' demands was that Vermont was not going to be able to release his name, release information about his crimes, and they were not going to be able to prosecute him. And with that, they all pulled up a map of Burlington, Vermont.
Oh, Lord, this dog.
I need you to sit down. I need you to sit down and be quiet. No, don't argue with me. Sit down. Are you done?
Are you gonna be quiet now, girly pop?
In June of 2011, Keyes had traveled to Maine, stopping in Indiana and Vermont on the way there. Keyes told investigators that he had stayed at a hotel in Essex, Vermont. He claimed he went fishing for a few days, but he got bored with it, so on the third night he left his hotel room carrying a bag that had a camping stove as well as the contents of one of the many murder caches that he had stored nationwide, mind you.
So he was just ready to kill anybody anywhere.
Pretty much, yeah. Yep. So they were buried in the big buckets, like the big Home Depot buckets.
Uh-huh.
And it had all supplies in that one bucket that he could use to abduct and kill somebody.
That's normal behavior. Mm-hmm.
This included weapons, restraints, and things of that nature that he'd hidden. He was going to go trolling that night. He initially staked out an apartment complex, and he did have a victim in mind who pulled up in a VW Bug. Keyes was about to make his move when the guy got out of the car just a little too quickly for Keyes' liking, so Keyes moved on. He walked around town until he found a home that appeared to be the home of a couple with no kids or dogs.
So, easy victims.
Yes. This was the home of Bill and Lorraine Courier. They were a couple in their 50s, and like he thought, they had no kids and no pets. He cut the phone lines to their house and waited in their backyard for hours to make his move. He was wearing all black with a headlamp, and he was smoking cigars and waiting until the neighbor went to bed.
And nobody noticed the cigar smell?
The smell or the
smoke?
The ash, like when you're smoking a cigar, you can see.
Nobody fucking noticed that?
Which is odd because the neighbor was a smoker and he kept coming outside to smoke.
And he just never noticed?
Didn't notice this dude in the backyard.
All right, well.
So the neighbor eventually goes to bed. He waits a little longer and then takes a lawn chair from their patio and hoists himself into their garage. He was able to break the window to the door of the house from the garage. He rushed into the courier's bedroom and blitz attacked them. He woke them up, screaming, zip-tied them both to restrain them, and he kept them off guard by berating them with questions. Were there any guns in the house? There was a loaded .38 in the nightstand. Any pills, jewelry, ATM cards? What's the PIN number? After going through the house, he loaded Bill and Lorraine into their car, and when they started pleading for their lives, he told the couple the same thing that he had told Samantha, that he was kidnapping them for ransom, and that they would be released once he was paid. He drove the couple to an empty house, which he had cased earlier in the day.
Oh, Lord. Okay.
The house was for sale, and the occupants had already moved out. The house was abandoned and in decrepit shape, holes in the roof, total disrepair.
So, nobody buying that house.
On the way to the house, he said that they had been passed by a police car, and it made him really happy to think that the couple had seen it, and probably seeing this police car gave them hope that they would survive their situation.
Ugh. I hate this guy. I think, I hate him. Yeah.
He's dragged Bill into the house first and took him down to the basement. When he came out, Lorraine had been able to get out of the car. She was in the driveway. However, he managed to tackle her and dragged her into the house and up the stairs to one of the bedrooms of the house, where he tied her to the bed. He then returned to the basement to find Bill was ready to fight for his life. Police believe that he was going to assault Bill had Bill not fought.
What do you mean assault him?
He was going to rape Bill.
Okay.
But Bill wanted a fight. So Bill ruined Keyes' plans, and that made Keyes angry.
Oh no! A man wants to fight for his life and, survive? Who could have predicted this? How terrible!
And he took it really personally that Bill dared mess with his plans.
I mean, it's pretty clear at this point that he's not gonna, just let them chill.
No, he's obviously got other plans in mind if he's going to separate them like that.
I feel like at this point it's very clear that he's not doing it for ransom, so of course he's,
Yeah.
gonna fucking fight back. Why is he taking it personally? Of course he's going to.
Because he's the type of person that he makes plans and he expects
the world doesn't revolve around you.
He expects the plans to go exactly how he envisioned them.
Oh
my God. So in a fit of rage, he hit Bill twice in the head with a shovel. He returned to the bedroom upstairs, and after covering the windows and repeatedly raping and strangling Lorraine, he dragged her down to the basement and presented her with Bill.
Oh, man.
At which point, he strangled her to death and then dragged both bodies to the corner of the basement, where he doused their hands and faces with Drano and covered them with debris from the house.
Drano?
Drano is acidic in nature.
So,
as we well know here in this house.
We know Drano too well,
it
guys.
Was going to
corrode their bodies?
Corrode their faces and their fingerprints to make it harder for them to be identified. His plan was actually to set the house on fire, but he didn't because it was too close to dawn, and he felt that the fire department would be called much more quickly than if it had been the middle of the night. He took the couple's car and drove it to a parking lot near where he had parked his rental car. He got into his car, and on the way back, he drove by the courier's house and watched as police. He also admitted to investigators that while he was in Texas in February, that he'd robbed a bank. He had researched small towns with low crime rates, which would therefore have inexperienced police forces.
So they'd be more ill-equipped to actually deal with a major crime like that.
Correct.
Right.
He set a house fire in a neighboring town to draw officials away from the town and the bank that he was planning on robbing. He also told them that he'd been driving around for days with no real plan, except that if he had the opportunity, he would be ready to take it.
Ugh.
But he really was intending to hide his guns while he was in Texas. He refused to tell investigators how the fuck he got multiple guns onto airplanes in 2012.
Yeah, no, how the fuck do you do that? Like, this is post 9/11. And even then, wait, did they allow guns on planes before that? Probably not, did they?
I would go on a limb and say no. The only way you can get a gun on a plane is you have to declare it. It has to have special locks on it.
So people don't do 9/11 again?
Exactly. That's the name that he gave investigators was 58-year-old Jimmy Tidwell, who was last seen on February 15th leaving his job at 5:30 a.m. They found his truck days later with nothing inside except for his glasses. Jimmy was what they would consider a low-risk victim. He was married, he had grown children, and a steady, boring job, and he lived a really quiet life. Keyes had actually worn Jimmy's hard hat when he robbed the bank.
Okay. That's not... Really?
Yeah.
Really? Like, come on now.
At this point, he told investigators that for him to reveal the really gnarly shit that he'd done, he wanted them to find the bodies of the couriers with photographic evidence. Obviously, investigators knew now that they had a serial killer on their hands. And a super rare one at that. Keyes had no victim type, he was well organized, and planned his crimes. He knew he was going to kill, and he prepped and he prepared days, months, and years in advance. He had no traditional hunting grounds, and in fact appeared to have a nationwide as well as possibly global victim pool.
An international serial killer.
He had no criminal record, and he was willing to travel quite a ways from his base to the location of his crimes. He also seemingly studied other serial killers, adapting and perfecting their styles.
I mean, there's clearly a level of intelligence there. It's just
intelligent. Put a map up. They used the to give them a radius around each one of the known places that he had traveled. Because the radius was shocking. Because Keyes was well traveled. To their knowledge, Keyes had been to Alaska, Washington, Texas, Illinois, Indiana, and most of the eastern seaboard, New York, New Jersey, Rhode Island, Connecticut, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Vermont, and Maine.
Oh, that makes me...
Oh, and Pennsylvania.
Oh.
Yeah. When they were done, they determined that Keyes had been to at least 26 states. They were combing through missing persons report in each of these areas and were able to identify 44 of the people whose pictures that they'd found on Keyes' computer.
Were they his victims, or?
That's what they were assuming.
Well, yeah,
Keyes is only giving out information a little bit at a time, and only what he wants to tell them.
So, you can't really be sure about anything with him.
Yes, because he keeps giving them different stories. They obviously sent Keyes for psychiatric evaluation, which lasted the better part of a whole day. He told them that he was born in Utah to who by the time that they were done would have 10 children.
Ew.
They lived completely off the grid. Their kids had no birth certificates. They were all delivered at home. They had no social security numbers. They were never sent to school. They never saw doctors.
Why do Mormons have so many kids?
I mean, they don't believe in birth control, so that's one of them.
Okay.
That look. Being that this was such a large and strange family, people started to take notice. That people were starting to notice them. They moved to Washington State, where they lived in a one-room shack with no exposure to the outside world for 7 years.
7 years?
7 years.
Lord.
That's where all these kids come in. They've got time on their hands. Although, it's a one-room shack, so I don't know where they're doing it.
A one-room shack?
One-room shack.
Why would you... First of all, why would you live in a one-room shack with your kids? That sounds terrible.
And how are you making more kids in a one-room shack?
Like, I sure hope they're not doing it with the kids in the shack. I sure hope they're not...
He's taking his wife behind the bushes. Because remember, during the warmer months, which would be April through October, the older kids would be forced to sleep in a tent.
Is that when they were making... No, because the younger kids are still in there.
Exactly.
Huh?
So this is still really fucked, because laterally speaking, we are not that far off from Washington State. So our temperatures are kind of similar. I know that in both April and October, we could have below freezing temperatures. We can have snow. All sorts of gnarly shit can go on.
So, not really an ideal fucking situation to be sleeping outside.
Exactly. Eventually, the parents decided to give up Mormonism in favor of an anti-Semitic militant group called the ARC. Which has produced known domestic terrorists.
I was going to be like, oh, yay, they're not Mormon anymore, but I'm worse.
Keyes was now introduced to outside people. He became obsessed with guns. He started breaking and entering and killing small animals.
Ew.
Once he killed the family cat in a really gnarly way because the cat went in the trash.
We're not going to get into that.
We're not, because
nope.
It's so gross. I can't. The cat suffered.
Not speaking the details of that out loud. Not happening.
At 15 years old, he built his own cabin just a mile away from his parents. And by 16, he was living there by himself. He started poaching and, quote, watching people in the woods for hours at a time.
Because that's not weird.
After he was arrested for shoplifting, he was forced by his parents to move back home. And when his parents searched his cabin, they found stolen guns and things of that nature. They then decided to move the family to Oregon, where Keyes' father would build houses, but...
Are they at least in separate tents?
That was not very specific. There were multiple tents.
Do the parents at least get a separate tent?
We don't know.
Are they still procreating?
I don't know their procreation time.
Kids,
They eventually moved to New York State, where the family did buy an actual house.
Wow.
And finally, they settled in Maine. He said that he was done with his family at this point, saying that they were cult shopping. He was disavowed by his father for this, But he oddly enough gave Keyes the New York house, where he lived by himself, teaching himself everything he needed to know to get his GED. He joined the military and was reportedly a really good soldier. His fellow soldiers did describe him as really awkward, mostly because of the huge difference in upbringing and knowledge of pop culture, recent events, things of that nature.
Because he did not, like, go outside for 7 years.
No, he had no idea what was going on other than what his parents were telling him. He did make some friends in the army, and he quickly started drinking. He did try the drugs, but he decided that he would not be doing those long term. His fellow soldiers taught him mainstream culture, and he enjoyed football and music. His first concert was Stone Temple Pilots, which is fucking epic. Definitely jealous.
Should have been you.
Yeah. Except I was not on the West Coast during that time.
Were you ever at the West Coast?
No.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Why'd you like at that time?
I have never been to the West Coast. Midwest-ish? Keyes' army buddies would describe him as tall. He was well over 6 feet, thin, having a large nose. Depending on who you talk to, you could either get the description that he was completely unprejudiced and being so anti-violence that he wouldn't fight back when attacked.
Okay, well, clearly not.
Or he was a white supremacist who was always looking for a fight. One soldier told a story of how when they were in the Middle East together, within minutes of being alone with Keyes, she tore out of the room, and Keyes tried to stop her from leaving. She was able to get away from him, and when questioned by the others, he said he threw her around because she wanted to try to run the show.
I mean, it's kind of her job, no?
Another soldier told of Keyes putting 2 scorpions in a can and watching them fight to the death.
Scorpions?
Scorpions.
Huh?
Just to watch them kill each other.
That's,
because scorpions will fight at all costs, even if the result is dying themselves.
They just fight for no fucking reason? Do scorpions hate each other?
Apparently there is some scorpion animosity.
Damn. Okay.
One soldier who was closer to Keyes than the others, was told the details of why they were investigating Keyes. His response was that he was...
Damn.
His superiors thought so highly of him that when the FBI called them, they assumed they were looking for a job reference.
Oh my god.
So he could be different people with different people. That doesn't make sense. He could be a different person depending on who he was with.
A different person. I mean...
Which I guess to an extent everybody does, but this is very drastic. He met an older woman who we will call Sally, who was half native, half black, and she quickly became pregnant. Initially, he wanted her to have an abortion, but she refused, and he did come around to the idea of being a father. When he was discharged from the army, they moved in together on the reservation, and he started drinking a lot. He was arguing with Sally about home births versus hospital births.
Ugh.
His stance was that he was more than capable of delivering a baby, and I'm certain he's saying that because he probably assisted his father in delivering his siblings.
That's kind of traumatizing.
Your father is still traumatized from when I had you guys.
Well,
he doesn't want to talk about it.
Well, didn't they, like, cut you open, though?
Yeah, he got to see all my organs laid out on my chest.
Oh, cute. I'd be traumatized too. Was he like fine? Did he like pass out? Did he throw
No, he
up?
kept it together.
Damn. That's actually traumatizing.
Because of the circumstances, he was more concerned
About us?
about you guys instead of the state of my organs. In retrospect, he's quite disgusted about it.
What was it? Just like he was so like it was just he was like so concerned and like focused on us at the time that it was just like he didn't even process fully what was like that his brain just wasn't like
He shut out that at the time.
yeah. I would too. Damn. That's actually kind of disgusting. Like, no offense. Thank you for doing that, because being alive is kind of cool, but like, Jesus Christ.
Sally won this argument, and she had the baby in a hospital.
Slay.
Unfortunately, she was diagnosed at that time with uterine cancer and needed a hysterectomy. Afterwards, she unfortunately became addicted to the pain meds that they gave her post-op. Me, being the stubborn asshole that I am, refused to take them.
What, when you...
As
after
soon
that
as I
whole
was
fiasco?
discharged, I flushed them. I did take them for the first couple of days because they ran out of wheelchairs, and the only way I was getting down to the nursery was to walk. So I walked.
The hospital ran out of wheelchairs?
I don't know how. I don't know how, but they tried to keep me in the room.
They tried to keep you in the room while your babies were, not in the room?
Yeah. So, against your father's better judgment, he assisted me in walking all the way down to the NICU.
Well, it worked out fine.
I did.
You're still here.
I am
Nothing
still
happened,
here.
So
He started withdrawing from Sally at this point and ended up taking his daughter, becoming a single father. He would, at this time, meet traveling nurse Kimberly, but was still seeing Sally on the side. She was trying to make it work with Keys, but Keys was done, and he wanted to move to Alaska with Kimberly. With a custody battle on the horizon, Sally was forced to clean up her act and was given custody of her daughter.
good for her, also, for recovering.
That's a lot, and it's hard.
Yeah. Like, good for her for having the, strength and capacity to do that for her daughter. And, good that he didn't get custody.
He did get visitation, but she got primary custody. I think it also helped that she was Native, and for him to have to move off the reservation would remove her from
her culture?
From her culture, yes.
Yeah. I mean, not that the government really cares about that. But that's like... But, like, good on her.
Before moving in with Kimberly, Keys took the opportunity to drive up and down the west coast, including into Mexico. He admitted to investigators that he had to keep his compulsions under control. And when he felt like he was going to be at his breaking point, he would travel back east. He declined to give any further details until they were able to find the couriers, which was going to be hard because investigators had found out that the house had been demolished years ago and that the couriers were likely in the landfill.
Man.
Prosecutor Feldis reportedly tried to interview Keys to the point where the DOJ told him to cut the shit, but he flat out ignored them. Keys kept asking for his execution date. He went so far as to study how Oklahoma City bomber Timothy McVeigh's execution was fast-tracked after he admitted his guilt. There's the traditional justice system, And then there's prison justice, which is very different.
Wait, he didn't want to be in prison?
No, I think he probably wanted to avoid prison.
So he was like better than the alternative?
Yeah.
Like, I'll just die? I mean, I guess that makes sense. Especially, he probably wouldn't get kind treatment in there, considering, all of that.
On May 23rd, while Keyes was in court, with cuffs and leg irons on, and being surrounded by agents, Keyes suddenly jumped up and tried to make his escape, skipping over rows in the gallery.
Oh.
After all of the initial finger-pointing was over, they discovered that prison officials may have been a little bit lax with Keyes.
Oh my god.
Once they'd let Keyes, a known serial killer, alone in a room with Detective Bell. Another time, Bell found out that Keyes had a sliver of wood in his mouth. The guards had given him pencils, and he was whittling them down.
With what?
I would assume his teeth or his nails or something like that. The edge of the bed.
Oh.
I don't. Another time, he saw what appeared to be a plastic bracelet on Keyes' wrist and was told by the guards that when Bell brought up all of his concerns about the safety, he was ignored by prison officials.
Ugh.
He used the wood to pick the locks and the plastic wrap to make it appear that the restraints were still on snugly.
If I was Belle, I'd just be like, I fucking told you so. Like, you guys are fucking idiots.
At some point, it's completely fair to tell people, I told you so.
Well, yeah, in this circumstance,
In an effort to force the feds to set an execution date, Keyes told investigators about more murders. This time he told them that there were 2 pairs of murders on different sides and the other were 2 women. Upon researching his claims, they found that in July of 2006, 2 pairs of hikers set out along the same trail in a national forest. One pair was husband and wife, and the other was mother and daughter. When the 2 pairs reached a split in the trail, each went their own way. Hours later, when the husband-wife pair made their way back down the trail, they saw the mother and daughter along the main trail. When they checked on them, deceased, they could not find any cause of death. They had to hike to get help.
Oh my god.
This was 56-year-old Mary Cooper and 27-year-old Mary Stodden. Neither had much in the way of visible wounds, like I said, but they would later find out that both were shot in the head with a .22.
Wait, how are they shot? But there's no visible...
I think maybe just the way that they were posed. They couldn't initially find any wounds.
Like, it wasn't...
Plus, if you have a lot of hair...
It could, like, cover it.
Yeah.
So it just wasn't immediately apparent.
Correct. Yeah.
Oh.
The investigators thought these murders were definitely Keyes because he liked a .22, frequented national forests, and his phone pinged a few hours' drive from the forest. Eventually, feds had to sit Keyes down and tell them that they were unable to find the couriers. It had been too long, and the landfill was gigantic. And people in Vermont were starting to take notice that the feds were searching their landfill. Vermont prosecutors decided that, contrary to their prior agreement with the feds, were to prosecute Keyes for the murders. Keyes was incensed. The feds did not only keep their promises, but Keyes was now all over the Vermont news. He did not want to work with them anymore if this was going to be the result. So Bell decided that if they could identify a victim without the help of Keyes, they assumed that Keyes had traveled through they assumed that when Keyes traveled through Indiana, he had to have killed somebody. They found that in June of 2011, Lauren Spearer, a college student, went missing after a night out. They were able to track Keyes through Indiana using toll booth information, and when brought the missing woman's picture to when they brought the missing woman's picture to Keyes, he told them to do their jobs and to figure it out. The feds were also toying with the idea that there must have been some victims that Keyes had allowed to live. This was because he had made a statement that he had been 2 different people for 14 years. Keyes admitted that at about age 18, just prior to joining the military, he had planned an abduction on what was basically a area lazy river. He prepped and planned, and on the day of this abduction, showed up with just a bathing suit. He snatched a girl that was lagging behind her friends, took her to a remote bathroom, tied her up, and raped her, with the end goal of murdering her. Somehow she was able to talk her way out of it, and Keyes eventually took her back to the river and sent her downstream. He later admitted that he regretted doing this. Probably the letting go part. That would be my assumption.
Well, yeah, because he did that same fucking thing a ton of other fucking times. Never said he regretted it. Why did he regret letting her go? Just because, like, he wanted to kill her, or he regretted letting somebody who could potentially,
I think he felt like he let his emotions take over in that situation because he truly meant to kill her. The bathroom that he brought her to was like a remote bathroom that waste goes into like all the waste goes into like a big tank underground, and he was planning on disposing her there.
Disposing her how? Like,
I don't know how. Like they had to occasionally come out to this area and pump it. I think he figured that if he did it and dumped her in there, they wouldn't find her for a while, if ever.
Rotating.
Then there was Jane Doe. In August 2007, in Boca Raton, Florida, a woman was coming out of the mall, and she strapped her son into the back seat of her black SUV. She got into the front seat, and when she looked into the rearview mirror, Keyes was sitting in the back seat with a gun trained on her toddler.
Oh my god.
He took her to withdraw the Daily Max. He then directed her to drive to a hotel parking lot and told her to get out of the car. Panicked, Jane begged for her life and the life of her child. Keyes told her to get in the back seat, where he cuffed her hands behind her back and zip-tied her head to the headrest. You can buy big zip ties.
Well, yeah, but
because all you would need to do.
Did it go on like the metal?
Yes.
Okay. Because I was like, that would have to be a massive fucking zip tie.
Yeah, no, it just had. When Jane had issues breathing, Keyes used a knife to cut the zip tie on her throat, which probably was terrifying. She said that when her son dropped his bottle, Keyes retrieved it and gave it right back to him. He drove her back to the mall, re-zip tied her neck to the seat, and allowed her to call her son's father. That her car was broken down and she needed a ride. She was also told to tell the police that a short, fat, black man was responsible for the crime. After Keyes left her, she was able to get her hands out in front of her and then able to get the zip tie off. And she got in the front seat of the car and drove for help. But nobody believed her.
Ugh.
That sort of thing just didn't happen in Boca Raton. Plus, they didn't believe that she would be able to get out of her restraints.
But, like, why would she lie about that, though?
I have no idea. I mean, she most definitely must have had marks, at the very least, on her wrists and neck.
Well, I mean, because she was struggling to breathe, right?
Yeah.
So if it was that tight, wouldn't it leave a mark?
Oh, absolutely.
Like, what the fuck is wrong with these people?
They didn't believe her until some months later, when Randy Gorenberg, the wife of an heir to be found, and she was found after someone saw her get pushed out of the back of a black SUV. She had a gunshot wound to the head. Her purse was gone, but her jewelry was still on her. And then there was a day that a security guard at the very same mall called the police because he saw an idling SUV in the Sears parking lot, where he found Nancy Bocchino and her 7-year-old daughter Joey restrained in the same exact manner that Jane Doe had described. Both were also shot in the head.
He killed a 7-year-old?
He killed a 7-year-old.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
All of the victims had used the same mall entrance at the same time of day. All of them drove SUVs, and Jane's police, in an effort to get more information from Keyes, they confronted him with a picture of Deborah Feldman, who had He did, however, share with them that he kept his travels and crimes on a tight timeline, so it would appear that he couldn't be associated with the crimes, because the timeline was that tight that it would look like he would have to have been at two places at the same time. He said that guns and bombs were his hobby, and
That's normal.
Yep. He was well practiced in breaching, which is blowing doors open, and that he was considering bombing and or committing crimes in churches.
Oh.
He liked the idea of defiling an altar, and he also relished the idea that the victims would be found in such a horrifying way by others.
So,
after the Fed searched his home in New York, they never released what they found. However, they did add a classification on his case file of terrorist.
okay, well, yeah.
On December 1st, 2012, Israel Keyes committed suicide in prison using razor blades and a noose.
That seems a little excessive.
Covering all his bases.
One could have gotten the job done.
He
You didn't need both, my guy.
He painted 12 skulls on the wall of his cell in blood, and the words, "We are one," as well as "Belize."
Like the country?
The country.
Sorry. I'm not sorry. He was a piece of shit. Anyway.
I think they're thinking that maybe he is referencing that he had committed crimes in Belize, but they definitely thought he committed crimes in the Middle East. He probably committed crimes when he was in Mexico, and he was once recorded telling the feds that Canadians don't count.
Poor Canadians, man. Canadians don't count. Bitch, what the fuck does that even mean?
An investigation was conducted about the incompetence at the prison, which was clearly long overdue.
Yeah.
His body was not found until the morning shift change at 6 a.m. Well, according to...
So he was there for 8 hours and nobody
noticed at all.
Okay, well, clearly somebody wasn't doing their job right.
Upon reviewing the footage, it was found that at 7 o'clock, Keyes went to the prison's law library and returned 2 hours later. The night guard claimed that he did his bed checks throughout the night, the last one being at 5 a.m.
Clearly not well enough.
He claims he never saw anything.
Fucking skulls painted on the wall, or the fucking blood just everywhere,
Apparently,
or the dead body, or the noose, nothing.
Well, Keyes was wrapped up in his blankets as per his usual sleeping position.
Still, you have to have noticed something. Like, what?
There was a lot of blood. A lot of blood. When the morning guard was doing his check, he saw the blood and entered the cell, where he found Keyes covered in blood, and he was in rigor mortis.
Oh.
He called for help, and paramedics arrived at 6:10.
A little late, don't you think?
There's still protocol. They still have to call paramedics
Yeah,
just
I
in
know.
case.
But, like, you know, he's very much dead at this point.
They found blood all over the bed and the floor, as well as in 2 cups and 2 milk cartons.
Like he was using them as paint cups?
Maybe. Probably. Which is gross.
Did he... what does that mean?
It was discovered that Keyes had embedded a razor blade because they gave him a razor.
They gave him a razor? What the fuck is wrong with these people? Man, fuck him.
So he had embedded a
Fuck
razor
everybody.
blade into a pencil and used it to slash his wrists, where he then used his bed sheet tied to his foot as a noose.
So, wait, did he just, like...
I would assume that's what he did.
You can't see what I'm doing right now, but you can guess. That doesn't seem efficient. I think just the razor blades would have worked. But, okay. Just gotta make sure, I guess. So wait, how was he collecting the blood? Was he just like putting, like, sitting with his wrists
all I
over the
can
cup
think of is like
and letting it drip? Like,
Interview with a Vampire, where he slits the mouse's neck with his nail and just like squeezes all the blood into the cup.
like juices it?
Juices the mouse.
Oh my god.
Juice in the mice.
God.
The feds also found a multi-page suicide note, but it was saturated with blood, so they couldn't read most of it.
Damn.
They quickly put a lid on the investigation. When word of this debacle went public, investigators received calls from people across the country who said they had close encounters with Keyes in their homes, on beaches, in national parks, and in campgrounds.
Damn.
Because Keyes was quite proud of the fact that he'd never left evidence to connect him to any of his crimes, no one will ever know how many victims there are.
So, the families, the people who knew them, they don't get closure?
No.
What do you think was in his suicide note? Like, do you think there could have been more names? Or, like, a number that they just will never know?
Maybe a number, but he officially claimed to have killed less than a dozen.
Okay, well, that doesn't seem very likely. I lie.
He obviously at least killed one Canadian.
Yeah.
Probably
like,
at least one in Belize. He admitted killing the couriers, Samantha, 2 sets of people in Washington State, the guy in Texas that he wore his Howard hat.
You know, so it's... if that's what he admitted to, because they could have found that out anyway.
Yes, they could have.
Definitely more than a dozen. I'm assuming.
They are thinking that perhaps Keyes is the most prolific serial killer that the United States has ever seen.
And we'll just never know.
We will never know.
Ugh, and this guy was like...
They feel
just
that
around?
he outdid Bundy.
And he was just like, around?
Nationwide.
Not a fan.
In 2016, Kevin Feldis was given the position of resident legal advisor to the Department of Justice office.
Isn't this that fuck-ass guy?
This is that fuck-ass guy. So he was given the position of resident legal advisor for the DOJ Office of Professional Development and Training in Indonesia.
Okay, well, hopefully he fucking learned.
They probably set him there as, like, quotes, punishment and to get him out of the United States.
So they were like, this guy can't interfere with our shit by doing his fucking... Like, okay.
Kevin Feldus somehow still holds an active law license in the state of Alaska.
Feldus, when I catch you, Feldus. Feldus, when I catch you, Feldus. Anyway.
And that is the delightful story of serial.
Fuck that guy. Fuck that guy. It's kind of crazy how much of this could have been prevented if, like, anybody just fucking took a single fucking second to care at many points throughout his fucking serial killing career. Like, if literally anybody had just stopped and done something or, like, thought with their brains for 2 seconds, most of this could have been prevented.
Well, he didn't leave any evidence when he committed his crimes.
I know, but there are just so many points in which it's like, it could have been stopped. Like, or people, like, are you kidding? Are you fucking kidding?
Well, he had a definitely traumatic upbringing. Then he was kept separate from society as a whole for years. When he probably thrived in the army because it's a structured setting, and he never had any sort of structure in his life.
Yeah, and also, you know, the army does violence, and he was just like, this shit just irritates me.
Yeah, and it was just one screw up after screw up in the beginning of Samantha's case.
Yeah, no, like, the level of incompetence. Kind of crazy.
Well, on that delay, you can follow us on
Facebook, Instagram.
You can find us on Facebook and Instagram.
You should follow us there, too. You should follow us here, too, wherever you're listening to it.
You can also email us at sinisterstudiespod@gmail.com.
Yeah. Rate us, also, or I will cry.